Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that honestly goes way beyond just sports. We're tracing the journey of a guy who literally redefined what's physically possible on a football pitch. But look, this isn't going to be just another highlight reel of goals and trophies. We're exploring unbelievable adversity, relentless resilience, and sheer undeniable tactical genius. We are looking at the crucible that forged an absolute legend, Lionel Messi.
Okay, let's dive into this because, to truly grasp the height of his glory, we absolutely have to acknowledge the staggering weight of the expectations he carried. Where is Messi? Where is he? I mean, despite his godlike status over in Barcelona, there were some deeply painful moments on the international stage where the media narrative just turned completely toxic. They questioned his body language, his passion, his ability to even lead. It's a stunning contrast, right? The most famous athlete in the world, routinely brought to his knees by crushing media criticism whenever he couldn't single-handedly carry his entire team.
So, Section 1. A dream threatened by growth.
Let's step back a bit to his childhood in the dusty streets of Rosario, Argentina. By age 6, playing for Newell's Old Boys, he was already part of a youth team so incredibly dominant they were known locally as the Machine of '87. But get this, at just 10 years old, that whole dream was nearly derailed. His maximum projected height, just 4 foot 7 inches. Young Leo was diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency. Basically, without medical intervention, his body just wasn't going to grow. The treatment meant daily hormone injections, which he actually had to administer to himself eventually, but honestly, the real barrier wasn't the needles. It was the crushing $1,500 monthly cost. For his working-class family, his dad was a steel factory worker, his mom a part-time cleaner, that was an astronomically unaffordable sum. Local clubs couldn't, or maybe just wouldn't, commit to paying that long-term. His future was quite literally slipping away.
So, sheer desperation led the family to look across the Atlantic. In September 2000, a 13-year-old Messi secured a trial at FC Barcelona's legendary La Masia academy. And the stakes, they couldn't have been any higher. It wasn't just a football career on the line here. It was his chance at a healthy, normal life. And man, did he deliver. Within just minutes of watching him play, Barcelona's sporting director Carlos Rexach was so blown away, so convinced, that he famously drafted a contract right then and there on a paper napkin, literally the only paper he could find in the restaurant. That tiny little napkin secured his medical treatment, and in return, Barcelona secured their entire future.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, Mastering the False Nine.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tactical evolution that made him statistically unstoppable. By the time he broke into the first team, everyone knew he was special. Under Frank Rijkaard, Messi was a pure right winger, a dribbler whose job was to beat defenders and feed traditional strikers. But notice the shift when Pep Guardiola takes the reins in 2009. Guardiola moves him centrally into a role known as the false nine. And guys, this move changed football history forever. Later on under Luis Enrique, he shifts back to a right-sided playmaker role. But it's that middle era, the Guardiola era, that set up the single most crucial tactical shift of his entire career.
So, what exactly is a false nine? Well, it's essentially a center forward who doesn't just stay up top fighting with big bruising defenders. Instead, they repeatedly drop deep into the midfield space, right between the opposition's defense and midfield lines. For Messi, this was an absolute masterstroke. Think about it. If the center backs followed him into the midfield, it created massive, gaping holes for Barcelona's wingers to sprint into, and Messi could just carve them up with defense-splitting passes. But if the defenders decided to stay back, well, they essentially gave the greatest dribbler in the world time and space to turn and run full speed directly at them. Dropping deep like this allowed his passing, his dribbling, and his incredibly clinical finishing to all shine at the exact same time.
Now, contrast that false nine dominance with the later MSN era, where he played alongside Luis Suarez and Neymar. When Suarez arrived, he played as your classic traditional center forward, staying high up the pitch and keeping those center backs occupied. Because of this, Messi's starting position shifted back out to the right wing. But here's the magic. Because Suarez was keeping the defense so busy, Messi had complete freedom to just cut inside, orchestrate the game like a traditional number 10, and drop perfectly weighted lobbed passes right over the defense. It was this fluid, super dynamic setup that resulted in a mind-boggling 364 goals between the three of them over just 3 seasons. Just insane.
But let's rewind to that false nine era for a second, because the sheer statistical dominance he achieved then is almost impossible to wrap your head around. Just listen to this number, 91. In the single calendar year of 2012, Lionel Messi scored 91 goals. To put that in perspective, most elite strikers dream of hitting maybe 30 or 40 in a year. 91 is a Guinness World Record that completely rewrote the standard of what a forward could actually do in modern football. No one had ever seen anything like it.
Okay, let's shift gears to Section 3, the weight of a nation.
While Barcelona was basically one long golden era for him, his international journey, yeah, that was a much, much darker story. The pressure he faced back home in Argentina was absolutely crushing. He was constantly, relentlessly compared to the ghost of Diego Maradona, the guy who famously brought Argentina World Cup glory back in 1986. For the longest time, the media narrative was that until Messi did exactly the same thing, he could never truly be considered the greatest. It's a heavy burden. And you can trace this agonizing history of near misses on the world's biggest stage. Quarterfinal exits in 2006 and 2010, a really chaotic round of 16 exit in 2018. But man, the deepest wound was definitely 2014. Argentina actually reached the final, only to lose to Germany in heartbreaking extra time. Messi was awarded the Golden Ball as the tournament's absolute best player, but that image of him just staring blankly at the ultimate prize he wasn't allowed to touch, that defined a whole generation of heartbreak for Argentine fans.
But honestly, this is exactly where the true character of the man is revealed. It really brings to mind that famous quote, "It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." After actually retiring from international duty for a brief stint following repeated Copa America final losses, he came back. He just couldn't quit. And that resilience finally paid off in 2021 when he lifted the Copa America, defeating Brazil in the final. That cathartic win sort of broke the curse, you know? It gave him this relentless singular drive to try one last time for the ultimate prize in Qatar.
Which brings us to Section 4, Tactics of a Final. So, the crucial point is, the climatic 2022 World Cup final against France was arguably the greatest match ever played in the history of the sport. It was heavily billed as Messi versus his PSG teammate Kylian Mbappe. But to understand how Argentina actually pulled this off, we really need to look at the tactical chess match that unfolded out there. Step 1. For about 80 minutes, Argentina completely suffocated France. They deployed this narrow 4-3-3 mid-block, essentially crowding the middle of the pitch to choke out France's playmakers, cut off all the passing lanes, and lock them in their own half. I mean, France didn't even manage a single shot for 70 minutes. But then, step 2. France makes this desperate, brilliant tactical shift. They move Mbappe to the left and switch to a super aggressive 4-2-4 formation. They started completely bypassing the midfield, just playing direct to their front four to isolate Argentina's defenders one-on-one. And wow, did it work. Mbappe scored twice in literally 2 minutes, which leads to step 3, extra time. Absolute chaos. France skipped their pivot midfielders entirely, launching the ball long and forcing a wild end-to-end transitional battle. It took a final Messi goal, another Mbappe penalty, and a truly unbelievable save by Emiliano Martinez at the very end just to drag the game to a penalty shootout.
And finally, Section 5, Securing the GOAT Legacy. In that incredibly tense final shootout, Gonzalo Montiel stepped up and buried the winning penalty. In the poetic words of the commentators that day, Lionel Messi had finally shaken hands with paradise. The ghost of Maradona was permanently laid to rest. The boy who was told he was too small, the man who was repeatedly told he wasn't enough of a leader, he had conquered the world. And when the dust settles, the sheer volume of his accomplishments definitively ends the GOAT debate, for sure. 12 league titles, 4 Champions Leagues, an unprecedented 8 Ballon d'Ors, and now the FIFA World Cup. It is a trophy haul that absolutely no one in the history of the sport has ever matched. It's just staggering to reflect on how far that 4'7" boy from Rosario, who really just needed a chance to grow, has actually come.
Which leaves us with a final thought for this explainer. We so often measure our athletes purely by the medal in their trophy cabinets. But if true greatness is forged not just by the trophies we lift, but by the impossible trials we overcome, the physical limitations, the crushing financial barriers, the agonizing weight of an entire nation's expectations, has anyone ever walked a harder path to infinity than Lionel Messi? Definitely something to think about the next time you see him step onto a pitch. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time as we dive into another fascinating story.